Imagine this. A sitting US president is shot dead in broad daylight. And within hours, the government tells us it was the work of a lone gunman. But what if that story isn't the whole truth? What if the most powerful nation in the world has spent decades hiding key information from its own citizens? From the FBI's failure to investigate crucial leads to the CIA's involvement in the investigation, questions about JFK's assassination have lingered for over 50 years. Why is the government still keeping documents secret? What is being hidden from the public? Stick around to uncover the shocking truths behind one of the biggest cover-ups in American history. The shots rang out on November 22, 1963. A motorcade in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, carrying President John F. Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally, slowed as it made its way down Elm Street. At 12:30 p.m., 3 shots were fired from the Texas School Book Depository. In a blur, the president was struck, the motorcade speeding away as chaos erupted on the streets. Within minutes, President Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, would be declared dead at Parkland Memorial Hospital. The world stood still, gripped by the horror of the loss. But even as the news of his death spread like wildfire, something much darker began to unfold behind the scenes. Kennedy was more than just a politician.
Ow!
He was the face of a generation's hope. At the time of his assassination, JFK had captured the imagination of the American people. His vision of a better future, his efforts in civil rights, and his role in navigating the Cuban Missile Crisis had made him a beacon of leadership in turbulent times. He was a man who inspired millions. His youth, his intelligence, and his charisma painted a picture of a new era in American politics. But just as his presidency was building momentum, that promise was violently cut short. The events that followed Kennedy's assassination were equally bewildering. The man arrested for the crime, Lee Harvey Oswald, was quickly charged with the murder, but before he could stand trial, he was murdered by nightclub owner Jack Ruby in a public display of violence. This added a layer of mystery to an already bizarre situation. The question loomed: was Oswald truly the lone gunman, or was there a larger conspiracy at play? Evidence, inconsistencies, and political pressures led many to believe that the story being presented to the American people did not add up. The U.S. government, under the leadership of President Lyndon B. Johnson, quickly established the Warren Commission to investigate the assassination. Yet, right from the start, doubts emerged about the investigation's integrity. Both the FBI and CIA agencies that were key players in the events leading up to Kennedy's death were heavily involved in the investigation, but were also found to have withheld crucial information. Information that might have changed the course of the investigation, and potentially the conclusion reached by the Warren Commission. There were strange gaps in the investigation. For example, the CIA's involvement in the investigation was deeply concerning. The agency, which had a complex relationship with Kennedy, was involved in covert operations in Cuba and had been opposed to Kennedy's policies. The FBI, meanwhile, was accused of failing to follow up on crucial leads. These actions pointed to a troubling reality. The very organizations that were tasked with investigating the death of the president had, in some instances, been complicit in withholding evidence, thus making it difficult to trust the narrative being provided to the public. The appointment of former CIA Director Allen Dulles to the Warren Commission raised further concerns. Dulles, who had been dismissed from his position by Kennedy after the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion, was seen as having deep ties to the intelligence community. His role on the commission, given his history with Kennedy, immediately prompted questions about the impartiality of the investigation. Critics argued that his presence was part of an effort to steer the investigation away from any uncomfortable truths about the U.S. government's involvement in the events surrounding the assassination. Was Dulles trying to protect the agency's interests, or was he a scapegoat brought in to legitimize a flawed investigation? There are several forensic anomalies that have fueled the persistent skepticism surrounding the official account of JFK's death. The most well-known is the single bullet theory, proposed by the Warren Commission. According to this theory, a single bullet fired by Oswald caused all of the injuries to both Kennedy and Governor Connally. This theory has been widely criticized by experts, with many pointing out that the trajectory of the bullet and the positioning of the men in the car made such a scenario highly improbable. Critics argue that there was no way a single bullet could have caused the wounds on both men in the manner suggested by the official report. Even more troubling were the findings from the autopsy conducted at Bethesda Naval Hospital. The official autopsy report stated that Kennedy's fatal wounds were caused by shots from behind. But eyewitnesses at the scene of the shooting, including medical staff at Parkland Memorial Hospital, suggested that the fatal shot came from the front. Could this discrepancy be due to a tampering of the body or the suppression of key evidence? Many have questioned whether the government altered the autopsy findings to fit the narrative of a lone gunman, or whether they failed to conduct a thorough investigation because they knew the truth would be too damaging to the official story. Another anomaly centers on the position of the president in the car at the time of the shooting. According to reports, Kennedy was hit by one of the bullets in the back of the neck. But the wounds described in the autopsy didn't match up with the physical evidence at the scene. Witnesses saw Kennedy's head snap backward after being struck, which contradicts the idea that he was shot from behind. Could the position of his wounds suggest the involvement of another shooter from the front? If so, why wasn't this explored more thoroughly by the Warren Commission? These physical oddities point to the possibility that Kennedy's assassination was not the result of a lone gunman, but rather a coordinated effort by forces within the government or outside it to eliminate the president. While the FBI and CIA have long denied any involvement in a conspiracy, the evidence suggests that the investigation was deliberately mishandled, and key information was suppressed to maintain a particular narrative. But who stood to gain from Kennedy's death, and what was their motivation? There are several theories that have circulated over the years, each one proposing a different explanation for the events surrounding the assassination. The theory that the US government was involved in the assassination is one of the most persistent. Many believe that certain factions within the government, particularly the CIA, military and intelligence community, saw Kennedy as a liability. His stance on Cuba and his attempts to de-escalate tensions with the Soviet Union may have been seen as a threat to the interests of these powerful groups. Did they believe Kennedy was too weak on foreign policy? And did they take action to remove him for the sake of national security? Another theory suggests the involvement of organized crime. The Mafia had long been at odds with the Kennedy administration, particularly due to the efforts of Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy to dismantle the mob's operations. Was the assassination, therefore, an act of retaliation by the Mafia, potentially coordinated with other elements of the US government? The theory that the Mafia played a role in Kennedy's death is supported by the fact that several of his associates, including people who had close ties to the Mafia, were connected to key figures in the investigation. The third theory involves the military-industrial complex. Kennedy's reluctance to escalate the Vietnam War, coupled with his efforts to ease tensions with the Soviet Union, led some to believe that military leaders and defense contractors saw him as an obstacle. Did they see Kennedy as a threat to their power and interests? And was the assassination an effort to eliminate him? Some believe that certain members of the military and defense contractors were complicit in orchestrating the assassination to ensure that US policy would continue on a path they supported. However, these theories remain difficult to prove conclusively, and much of the evidence is circumstantial. Critics of the conspiracy theory, particularly those who support the Warren Commission's findings, argue that there is simply no concrete evidence to suggest that any of these theories hold water. They maintain that the evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion that Oswald acted alone. But the numerous unresolved questions, inconsistencies, and anomalies in the official account make it hard for many to accept that explanation as final. As the years pass and new evidence continues to emerge, the question remains: why has the truth about JFK's assassination been hidden for so long? Why were so many key pieces of evidence either suppressed or ignored? And why was the investigation so fraught with inconsistencies? Could the government have been involved in the death of its own president? And if so, what does that mean for the future of public trust in government institutions? Why were certain files kept classified for decades? What truths have been hidden? How long will it take for the American public to learn the full extent of what happened that day in Dealey Plaza? The mystery surrounding JFK's death is far from over. And as long as the truth remains buried, the questions will continue to haunt the nation. The unanswered questions surrounding the assassination, combined with the government's history of secrecy, have left an indelible mark on American political life. The truth may be elusive, but the search for it continues. As the years stretch on, the skepticism surrounding the official account of JFK's assassination shows no signs of fading. With each declassified document, with each new theory proposed, the unsettling feeling grows stronger. The government's narrative may not be the complete truth. The inconsistencies in the evidence and the numerous questionable decisions made during the investigation have only deepened public distrust, especially as more information continues to trickle out, slowly unveiling the complexity of the situation. The government's efforts to control the narrative surrounding JFK's death have not gone unnoticed. Even as late as the 1990s, when the JFK Assassination Records Review Board was formed to facilitate the release of previously sealed documents, key pieces of evidence were still redacted or withheld entirely. This persistent withholding of information has led many to believe that the truth about JFK's assassination remains hidden to protect those in positions of power. What could these documents reveal that the government is so desperate to conceal? Could they contain details about the involvement of high-ranking officials, intelligence agencies, or even international players in orchestrating the president's death? One particularly striking aspect of the investigation is the way in which evidence was handled in the days following Kennedy's assassination. After the shooting, Kennedy's body was removed from Parkland Hospital and flown to Washington, D.C. for an autopsy at Bethesda Naval Hospital. But there is evidence that the autopsy was conducted under highly irregular circumstances. First, the autopsy was done by a team of military doctors, not civilian pathologists, which raises questions about whether the procedure was compromised. There were reports of the body being handled improperly, the chest wound and throat wound being described in ways that contradicted the initial findings made by Parkland Hospital doctors. Why was this change in procedure made? Were these actions taken to cover up evidence of a broader conspiracy, or was it simply the result of a rushed investigation? The discrepancies in the official story are troubling. For example, the trajectory of the bullets that struck Kennedy has been contested for decades. According to the official narrative, a single bullet, allegedly fired by Oswald from the Texas School Book Depository, was responsible for wounding both Kennedy and Governor Connally. Yet numerous ballistic experts have cast doubt on this explanation. They argue that the trajectory of the wounds suggests that at least one of the shots came from a different angle, possibly from the front. If this is the case, it raises the possibility that there were multiple shooters involved, which would directly contradict the official conclusion that Oswald acted alone. The issue of the magic bullet theory has also raised concerns about the credibility of the Warren Commission's findings. According to the theory, the same bullet that struck Kennedy in the back also caused a serious wound to Governor Connally, who was seated in front of the president. Many experts and researchers argue that the bullet's path, as described by the Commission, defies the laws of physics and human anatomy. How could one bullet fired from such a distance cause so much damage to two men in such a precise manner? This has led many to question the integrity of the investigation and whether the Warren Commission was truly concerned with finding the truth, or if it was more concerned with protecting the official narrative. Witness testimonies also reveal unsettling details that have been overlooked or ignored. Several witnesses reported hearing shots from locations other than the Texas School Book Depository, with many suggesting that the shots came from the grassy knoll. This location, which sits in front of the motorcade, is often cited in conspiracy theories as the site of a second shooter. The fact that so many eyewitnesses reported hearing shots from this area is significant. Yet, despite these testimonies, the Warren Commission steadfastly maintained that Oswald was the sole shooter, dismissing any evidence suggesting otherwise. Why were these witness accounts disregarded so quickly, and why has the idea of a second shooter been so vehemently rejected by the authorities? Another key piece of the puzzle is the role of Jack Ruby, the nightclub owner who shot and killed Oswald 2 days after the assassination. Ruby's actions have always seemed suspicious. He was able to bypass security and shoot Oswald in full view of law enforcement officials. His connection to organized crime and his possible motivations for killing Oswald have been the subject of much debate. Some argue that Ruby was acting on behalf of the mafia, seeking to silence Oswald before he could stand trial and possibly implicate others. Others believe that Ruby was motivated by a personal vendetta, or that he was coerced into killing Oswald by those in power. Whatever the reason, Ruby's actions have fueled further speculation that the entire chain of events surrounding Kennedy's assassination was far more complex than the official story suggests. The public skepticism about the official narrative is not just about the unanswered questions surrounding JFK's death. It is also about the broader context of government secrecy and political manipulation. The Warren Commission was tasked with finding the truth, but many believe it was created as a way to calm the public and control the damage caused by the assassination. Its findings, which exonerated the U.S. government of any involvement, were accepted by many, but rejected by others who felt that the investigation was not thorough enough. Lyndon B. Johnson, the vice president who assumed the presidency after Kennedy's death, was a key figure in shaping the aftermath of the assassination. Johnson's actions in the days following the shooting raise important questions about his role in the investigation. He was reportedly concerned about the political ramifications of the assassination and the potential fallout from a prolonged investigation into the circumstances surrounding Kennedy's death. Johnson's desire to quickly move on from the tragedy and prevent any further complications may have influenced the course of the investigation. Did Johnson, in his eagerness to preserve his political future, play a role in suppressing information about the assassination? These unresolved questions and conflicting pieces of evidence have led to a lasting mistrust of the official story. With the passage of time, many believe that the U.S. government has yet to reveal the full truth about JFK's assassination. Why, after all these years, are certain files still classified? What is the government still hiding? And why are they so reluctant to release the information? What would the full story reveal about the nature of the assassination and the individuals who may have been involved? The questions surrounding JFK's death are not just about a tragic event from the past. They are about the future of transparency and accountability in American government. If the government was involved in the assassination, what does that say about the lengths to which those in power will go to protect their interests? What does it mean for the future of public trust when the people who are supposed to protect the nation are the very ones hiding the truth? Why were key documents kept secret for so many years? And what is still being concealed? These are the questions that continue to haunt the investigation, and they will persist until the full story is finally told. The mystery of JFK's assassination is far from over, and the fight for truth continues. As we continue to unpack the layers of mystery surrounding JFK's assassination, the narrative inevitably expands to broader questions. It's about government secrecy and the lengths to which powerful forces are willing to go to protect their interests. This isn't just a story about a single tragic event. It's about the deeper, the systemic issues within U.S. government institutions that continue to influence the course of history. The reluctance to fully disclose documents related to JFK's assassination raises even more questions about what is at stake. Why, after so many years, are certain files still locked away? What truths are the government so desperate to keep hidden? And what consequences might they fear if the full story comes to light? The unanswered questions surrounding JFK's death are a reflection of a larger culture of secrecy in American politics. Time and again, we see that when institutions are shrouded in mystery, it's often not just about maintaining public order, but about safeguarding the interests of the powerful and protecting the status quo. Let us take a step back and look at how this culture of secrecy has influenced major political events throughout history. The JFK assassination is just one chapter in a much larger, complex story of government actions taken behind closed doors. Take, for example, the Vietnam War. Many historians argue that the U.S. government's decision to escalate the war was based on false premises, such as the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was used to justify military action. The subsequent revelations about the true nature of this event led to widespread protests and public outcry. Yet, much like the JFK assassination, the public was fed a narrative that was later proven to be incomplete or misleading. The similarity between the two events, both being manipulated to protect certain political agendas, is impossible to ignore. Another example can be found in the Watergate scandal. The investigation into the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. eventually revealed a widespread pattern of abuse of power and cover-ups by the Nixon administration. The lengths to which those in power went to manipulate the truth and maintain Control showed just how deep government corruption could run. The cover-up led to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. But it also exposed a larger issue within the government: the willingness of elected officials to conceal the truth and mislead the public for their own gain. The Watergate scandal helped fuel public cynicism about the integrity of the government. It's much like the aftermath of JFK's assassination. As we move further into the 21st century, the issues of government transparency and accountability remain as critical as ever. The rise of social media and the increasing influence of non-governmental actors have transformed the landscape of political discourse. But the fundamental issues of secrecy and disinformation persist. The internet has created a platform for people to question the official narrative and to search for alternative explanations. However, the very fact that so many questions about historical events like JFK's assassination remain unanswered gives rise to a deep mistrust of authority. The increasing distrust in mainstream news outlets, coupled with the rise of conspiracy theories, shows just how difficult it is to bridge the gap between the public and the government. And yet, despite the immense challenges, there is hope that we can eventually uncover the truth. The efforts of investigative journalists, researchers, and independent watchdog groups to shed light on government secrecy continue to gain traction. Every year, new pieces of evidence emerge, and with each new revelation, the possibility of exposing the full truth behind JFK's assassination becomes more tangible. In some cases, it's not just about exposing corruption or uncovering past lies, it's about restoring faith in the democratic process itself. The efforts of individuals like those who continue to seek justice for JFK's assassination show that the thirst for truth cannot be easily extinguished. People want to know what happened that day in Dealey Plaza. They want to understand how one of the most significant events in modern history could have been manipulated to fit a narrative that did unalign with the available evidence. Whether it's through the declassification of documents, the release of testimonies, or the uncovering of new leads, the pursuit of truth continues to drive this investigation forward. And as more of the puzzle pieces fall into place, we may finally see the full picture emerge. But this investigation into JFK's assassination is far from over. The fight for transparency and truth isn't just about one historical event. It's about the future of how we understand the actions of our government and hold those in power accountable. The desire for answers is not just about curiosity. It's about ensuring that we never again allow such important events to be manipulated by those who hold power. The questions surrounding JFK's death have become a symbol of the larger struggle for truth in an era of increasing government secrecy and political manipulation. The continued withholding of key documents and evidence surrounding JFK's assassination has left the American public in the dark for far too long. The persistent belief in a conspiracy, despite the official narrative, is not just a sign of distrust in one particular event, but a broader criticism of how much of history is shaped by what is concealed from the public. Could it be that JFK's assassination is merely the beginning of a much larger story that is still waiting to be told? As we continue to explore the unanswered questions, the unresolved forensic anomalies, the cover-up theories, the implications for our understanding of history and government transparency are profound. Will the truth ever be fully revealed, or will the government continue to hide behind layers of secrecy? How long will it take before we can finally trust the accounts we re-given and stop questioning the motives of those in power? The fight for the truth about JFK's assassination is far from over. But as long as there are people willing to ask the difficult questions, demand answers, and seek justice, the pursuit of truth will continue. As we continue to unravel the threads of government secrecy and cover-ups, the story of JFK's assassination stands as one of the most glaring examples of how power and influence can shape the narrative of history. But while the assassination remains one of the most debated and controversial topics in modern history, it also opens the door to a larger conversation. How much control do governments really have over the truth? How far are they willing to go to protect their interests? And what are the consequences when they fail to be transparent? The investigation into JFK's death has exposed a pattern of deception that stretches far beyond this single tragic event. The efforts to manipulate public perception, control the investigation, and suppress crucial evidence have all contributed to a climate of distrust that remains today. As we look at the broader context of political cover-ups, it becomes clear that JFK's assassination is not an isolated case. It is a reflection of the ways in which governments have historically concealed uncomfortable truths and manipulated public opinion. Let's take a moment to explore how these cover-ups extend beyond JFK. One of the most significant examples is the Vietnam War, where the U.S. government's official stance was drastically at odds with the reality of the war, its costs and consequences. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was used to justify a massive escalation of U.S. involvement in Vietnam, was later revealed to have been misrepresented, with the public initially being told that the U.S. Navy had been attacked by North Vietnamese forces. In reality, evidence suggests that the incident was exaggerated, if not fabricated, to gain public and political support for the war. As we now know, the war was based on lies that cost thousands of lives. Yet the true scale of the deception only became fully understood years later. Another example of a major cover-up is the Iran-Contra affair, which unfolded in the 1980s. The scandal involved the illegal sale of arms to Iran, a country the U.S. had just labeled as a state sponsor of terrorism, and the use of the proceeds to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua, despite a congressional ban. Once again, the U.S. government tried to keep the truth hidden. It was until investigative journalists and whistleblowers exposed the covert operation that the American people learned the full extent of the scandal. The cover-up surrounding the Iran-Contra affair was another stark reminder of how deeply government officials, with the help of intelligence agencies, can hide the truth and manipulate public opinion for political purposes. But these historical examples aren't just relics of the past. They have set a precedent for how governments handle difficult situations. From the surveillance programs revealed by Edward Snowden to the ongoing political and military operations conducted by governments in secrecy, the issue of transparency and the desire for control over information remain as relevant as ever. The modern age has given rise to new challenges, especially in the realm of technology and global surveillance, but the core issue remains the same. How much are we, the public, really allowed to know about the actions of our government? As more and more documents are declassified, the floodgates of information begin to open, and we see the full scale of the manipulation. But this information often comes in pieces slowly, and often years or decades after the fact. The question remains, why does it take so long for this information to be made public? What is the government still hiding? Why, after so many years, are we only getting bits and pieces of the truth? The lesson here is not just about JFK's assassination. It's about the ongoing struggle for transparency and accountability in government. So the more we learn, the more we understand the lengths to which powerful interests will go to protect their power and influence, and the more we question the systems that allow these cover-ups to take place. It is clear that those in power often have the ability to shape history in ways that protect their own interests. But it's also clear that this doesn't have to be the case. In recent years, we've seen a growing movement toward greater transparency. People are demanding answers. And the increasing use of social media and other platforms to share information has made it harder for governments to control the narrative. But despite these advancements, the struggle continues. Every time a new document is released, a new whistleblower comes forward, or a new conspiracy theory gains traction, the same question lingers. What are we still being kept in the dark about? The public's demand for truth is stronger than ever, but the fight for full transparency remains an uphill battle. As long as governments continue to operate in secrecy, the people's trust in those institutions will remain fragile. The desire to uncover the truth is not just about curiosity. It's about reclaiming power from those who have used secrecy to control history and shape the future. As we reflect on the JFK assassination and the countless cover-ups that have followed, it becomes increasingly clear that we need to demand more from our government. We must continue to ask the tough questions and push for greater transparency, so that future generations can have a clearer understanding of their history. Not one that has been carefully curated and manipulated to serve the interests of the powerful. The fight for truth is not over, and as long as we continue to demand answers, we can hope that one day the full story will be revealed. In the case of JFK, it's been over 50 years since his death, and still, there are questions that remain unanswered. What else is being hidden? What other historical events are shaped by secrets, lies, and manipulation? Why do we continue to accept these incomplete narratives? And what will it take to get the full truth about JFK's assassination and other political cover-ups? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is certain. The search for truth must continue. If we are to restore trust in our institutions, we must ensure that the full story is told, no matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable that truth may be. As the investigation into JFK's assassination continues to unfold, we can't ignore the deep-rooted implications of secrecy and its impact on public trust. Time and again, we see how the concealment of truth affects not just one event, but entire political landscapes. The assassination of President Kennedy represents just one chapter in the larger story of government. Cover-up's an ongoing saga that stretches beyond this tragic event and reveals patterns of deception, manipulation, and an overarching effort to control the narrative at all costs. What does this pattern tell us about the nature of power and the lengths to which those in power will go to protect their interests? The assassination of JFK was not just an isolated incident. It was part of a much broader system of government secrecy, one that has shaped the course of American history in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. From the manipulation of intelligence to the strategic withholding of crucial information. The story of Kennedy's death raises significant questions about the integrity of government institutions. Perhaps the most significant takeaway from this investigation is that the government's control of the narrative has never been just about one man or one moment in time. It's about the entire system of governance and the power structures that exist within it. The ongoing efforts to suppress information about JFK's death, even decades after the event, demonstrate just how far those in power are willing to go to ensure that certain truths remain hidden. The use of secrecy to protect institutional interests, whether they are related to national security, political survival, or financial gain, is a dangerous precedent that continues to influence public trust in the government. As we've seen with other historical events, the government's failure to be transparent has had lasting consequences. Take, for example, the Pentagon Papers, a classified government report detailing the U.S. political and military involvement in Vietnam. When the papers were leaked in 1971, they revealed a stark contrast between the government's public statements about the war and the reality of its escalation. The document showed that successive administrations had lied to the public about the true extent of U.S. involvement in Vietnam, manipulating the narrative to justify the war. The leak of the Pentagon Papers further eroded public trust in the government and proved that those in power were willing to deceive the public for political and military gain. Similarly, the Watergate scandal of the 1970s, one of the most infamous political cover-ups in American history, demonstrated the lengths to which the U.S. government would go to maintain control. The scandal, which involved a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters and a subsequent cover-up by members of President Richard Nixon's administration, led to Nixon's resignation in 1974. The Watergate affair showed that even the highest office in the land was not immune to corruption and deceit. And just like with JFK's assassination, the true extent of the cover-up didn't come to light until years later, when investigations exposed the intricate web of lies that had been woven to protect those in power. The question that remains after examining these events is, why do these cover-ups persist? Why do governments continue to operate in secrecy, even when the truth has the potential to change public opinion and policy? The answer lies in the desire to maintain control. Information is power, and withholding or manipulating that information gives those in power the ability to shape the course of history. But this also comes at a cost. Public trust in government institutions erodes when the truth is hidden, leading to disillusionment and skepticism among citizens. As we look to the future, we must ask ourselves, how can we ensure that these cover-ups don't continue? What can we do to hold those in power accountable for their actions and demand greater transparency in our government? The answer lies in remaining vigilant, asking the tough questions and refusing to accept the official narrative without scrutiny. The fight for transparency is ongoing, and it's up to us to keep pushing for the truth. No matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it may be, The legacy of JFK's assassination, the government's failure to provide a full and honest account of the event, continues to shape our understanding of power, secrecy, and accountability. The unanswered questions surrounding that tragic day in Dallas should serve as a reminder that we must always be critical of the information we re-given and demand answers when the truth is being hidden. Why did the government feel the need to hide the truth about JFK's assassination for so long, and what other secrets are still waiting to be uncovered? These are the questions we must continue to ask, and they are questions that should be on the minds of every citizen. The search for the truth is far from over, and the battle for transparency in government remains as relevant as ever. As the investigation into JFK's assassination continues, the deep-rooted implications of secrecy extend beyond just the event itself. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes that the withholding of information was not a one-time error, but part of a broader pattern. The U.S. government's reluctance to fully reveal what happened that day is not just a question of transparency. It's about trust, accountability, and the very principles that underpin American democracy. For decades, the official narrative, shaped largely by the Warren Commission, remained unchallenged in the eyes of the government. But the public, sensing that something wasn't right, began to question the facts. From the beginning, it was clear that the government wanted to present the situation as a simple case. A lone gunman, acting on his own, took the life of the president. But as more research, new evidence, and contradictory witness testimony emerged, the simplicity of this explanation started to unravel. Consider the role of the CIA in all of this. Kennedy had been at odds with the agency over multiple issues, most notably his handling of the Bay of Pigs, invasion, and his reluctance to escalate the Vietnam War. The CIA's role in Kennedy's death has been the subject of much debate. The agency, which had been deeply involved in covert operations during the Cold War, was reportedly frustrated with Kennedy's leadership and his unwillingness to support more aggressive foreign policies. Did the CIA, frustrated with Kennedy's leadership, play a role in his assassination, either directly or by orchestrating a cover-up? Many believe that certain factions within the CIA had the motive and resources to make Kennedy's death look like the work of a lone gunman. But the CIA was not the only entity that seemed to have a vested interest in ensuring the public would never learn the full truth. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, was another agency that played a significant role in shaping the official narrative. Hoover, who had a long history of surveillance on political figures, civil rights leaders, and activists, had been known to act independently of the president's wishes. His aggressive stance on law enforcement often collided with Kennedy's more progressive political agenda. Hoover's involvement in the investigation into JFK's assassination raises serious concerns about the objectivity of the FBI's findings. Did Hoover suppress evidence or influence the direction of the investigation to protect the Bureau's interests or maintain its credibility? In the aftermath of the assassination, questions about the security at Dealey Plaza also arose. How could the president have been so vulnerable in broad daylight? Was there a failure of security, or was it a deliberate setup to allow the assassination to take place? Some argue that the lack of a proper investigation into the lapses in security is evidence of a cover-up, suggesting that those in charge either failed to act or, worse, allowed the assassination to happen. Why were there no immediate plans for a thorough review of the security measures in place that day? The lack of attention to this detail only adds to the growing suspicion that something more sinister was at play. The discrepancies in eyewitness testimony further complicate the investigation. Multiple witnesses reported hearing shots from different directions. Some pointed to the Texas School Book Depository, while others insisted the shots came from the grassy knoll. The eyewitness reports varied so much that the inconsistencies cast doubt on the Warren Commission's conclusion. Were these witnesses intentionally ignored, or was there an effort to discredit them to keep the official story intact? The differences in testimony and the lack of follow-up on conflicting accounts suggest that key evidence may have been deliberately suppressed. One of the most significant aspects of the investigation was the lack of transparency in the autopsy. The official autopsy, conducted by military doctors at Bethesda Naval Hospital, raised significant questions due to the irregularities surrounding the process. Medical personnel at Parkland Memorial Hospital who had initially attended to President Kennedy reported a much different description of the wounds than those found during the autopsy. Why were the findings at Bethesda allowed to overrule the initial reports from Parkland? Was this discrepancy part of a larger effort to control the narrative of Kennedy's death? As more documents have been declassified, the public's demand for transparency has only grown louder. However, the fact that key files were withheld for so many years raises suspicions that the full story has yet to be revealed. The release of certain documents, particularly those related to the CIA's covert operations during the 1960s, only fuels the belief that the government is hiding something. What are these documents hiding? Are they evidence of a conspiracy to remove a sitting president? Or do they reveal details that could compromise national security in a way the government is unwilling to admit? The continued withholding of these critical files speaks volumes about the government's desire to control the narrative surrounding JFK's assassination. As more records are released, new details emerge, but they often only add to the confusion. The inconsistencies in the investigation, combined with the suppression of evidence, leave us wondering, will we ever know the full truth? This uncertainty is compounded by the way the public has been treated throughout the investigation. The government's repeated insistence that there was nothing more to investigate, coupled with the lack of a thorough and unbiased investigation, has led many to distrust the official version of events. The skepticism surrounding the assassination is not just about one tragic day in Dallas. It is about the ongoing struggle for transparency, accountability, and truth in the face of governmental power. Why did the government go to such lengths to control the narrative of JFK's assassination? What are they still hiding, and why does the truth continue to elude us? These questions have plagued the American public for decades, and the search for answers is far from over. As new generations discover the inconsistencies in the official account, the story of JFK's assassination remains an open wound. The continued suppression of documents, along with the unanswered questions about the role of powerful agencies like the CIA and FBI, keeps the truth hidden from the public. With each passing year, the urgency of uncovering the full story only increases. What is it that the government fears so much that they have kept this information from us for over half a century? As the pieces continue to fall into place, the demand for full disclosure grows. The legacy of JFK's assassination remains one of the most unresolved mysteries in American history. The search for the truth continues, and the battle for transparency will only intensify as more questions arise and the stakes grow higher. The time may come when the full truth about JFK's assassination is finally revealed. But until then, the questions remain, and the suspicion that something has been hidden from the public persists. How long will it take for the full truth to come to light? Will the American people ever learn the complete story of what happened that day in Dealey Plaza? Or will the government continue to conceal the truth for the sake of its own agenda? These are the questions that demand answers, and the search for the truth is far from over. Stay tuned as we continue to explore the unanswered questions about JFK's assassination and the broader implications of government. Secrecy in our history. The fight for transparency is ongoing, and we will not stop until the full story is told. As we continue to delve into the intricacies of JFK's assassination and the decades-long cover-up, it's important to examine not just the government's actions in the immediate aftermath, but also the broader cultural and political ramifications that have shaped how we view power, secrecy, and accountability today. The assassination of President Kennedy, one of the most significant and tragic events in American history, continues to haunt the nation. But what does this continued mystery tell us about the very nature of government? Can a nation built on ideals of democracy and transparency truly function if its government deliberately deceives its people? What is the cost of such deceit? Not just in the short term, but in the long term, when the trust of the people has been so deeply undermined. This isn't just about JFK's death, it's about the lasting effect that government manipulation has on public trust. The failure to adequately investigate Kennedy's assassination and the systematic suppression of evidence have had lasting consequences for American society. When citizens feel that their government is hiding the truth, they begin to lose faith in its legitimacy. A sense of cynicism and distrust grows, creating a toxic environment where citizens feel disconnected from their leaders and their institutions. The aftermath of JFK's assassination helped sow the seeds for a broader crisis of confidence in the American government that would come to full fruition in later decades. The public's desire to find out the truth is not just a reflection of curiosity, a desperate need for accountability. If the government can lie about something as significant as the death of a sitting president, what else might they be lying about? The fallout from JFK's assassination has led to widespread questioning of government actions. From the Vietnam War to the Watergate scandal and beyond, the public has been conditioned to distrust the government. Not just because of one event, but because of the way secrecy and cover-ups have been handled in subsequent years. The revelations surrounding JFK's assassination are still relevant today, as they highlight the ongoing battle for transparency and accountability in our political system. The government's reluctance to fully disclose the truth about the assassination and the persistent doubts surrounding the official narrative speak to a broader issue of institutional transparency. The lingering question, which has persisted for decades, remains. Why are they still hiding the full truth? The parallels between the cover-up of JFK's assassination and other political scandals, such as Watergate and the Iran-Contra affair, are glaring. Each of these scandals involved the deliberate manipulation of public information, with the goal of protecting the interests of those in power. The fact that similar tactics have been used in various political contexts over the years shows that the ability of powerful institutions to control the narrative is not a one-time occurrence. It's an ongoing issue. The difference now is that the public has access to more information than ever before. And with this access comes a greater ability to challenge the official narrative. While the release of certain files has brought new insights into JFK's death, many key documents remain sealed, keeping the full story out of reach. The fact that these documents are still classified raises critical questions about government priorities. Why, after so many years, is the truth still being withheld? Is it because revealing the full details of the assassination would cause too much disruption, or is there something more sinister at play? The continued secrecy only reinforces the belief that there is more to the story, something the government is unwilling to acknowledge. The appointment of Allen Dulles, the former CIA director, to the Warren Commission only deepens the suspicion that the investigation was manipulated from the start. Dulles, who had been removed from his position as CIA director after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, had a vested interest in ensuring that certain elements of the investigation were not pursued. His appointment to the commission seemed to many a strategic move to control the investigation and steer it toward a predetermined conclusion. By placing Dulles in a position of power, the government may have been trying to protect its interests in those of the CIA. If from public scrutiny, as we continue to search for the truth, it's important to consider the broader implications of this secrecy. What is the cost of allowing these cover-ups to persist? The lack of transparency has undermined public trust, not just in the government, but in the institutions that shape American life. The FBI, CIA, and other agencies involved in the investigation have been complicit in withholding information. And this complicity is not just an issue of historical interest, it's a matter of current relevance. The continued reluctance to fully disclose the facts about JFK's assassination is a reminder of how little we truly know about the actions of those in power. One of the most haunting aspects of this ongoing investigation is the role that secrecy continues to play in shaping our understanding of historical events. The question of why key documents remain classified and why certain facts remain hidden is not just an academic concern, it's a question of public accountability. How can we hold our government accountable for its actions if the full extent of those actions remains hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and red tape? Moreover, the continued mystery of JFK's assassination has shaped the way Americans view their government. The assassination, one of the most tragic and defining moments in U.S. history, remains a source of deep public anguish. But it also serves as a powerful symbol of the challenges the American people face in their quest for truth. The inability to fully know what happened that day in Dealey Plaza serves as a microcosm of the larger battle for transparency in American politics. If the truth about JFK's death cannot be fully revealed, What hope is there for transparency in other areas of public life? The deeper we go into this investigation, the more apparent it becomes that the truth is not just a luxury, it is a necessity. The American public has the right to know the full story, and as long as that story remains hidden, the questions will persist, fueling suspicion and distrust. This is not just about one president's assassination. This is about the integrity of American democracy itself. What will it take for the truth to finally come out? Will the US government ever fully open its records and come clean about JFK's assassination? Or will the story remain locked away, a secret that we may never fully uncover? These questions, more than ever, need answers. The search for the truth continues, and only time will tell when or if the full story will finally be revealed. But one thing is certain, the battle for transparency and accountability will continue, not just in the case of JFK, but in every instance where the government attempts to control the narrative and conceal the truth. As we move further into the complexities of the JFK assassination, it's impossible to ignore the broader implications of how such a monumental event shaped not only public perceptions of government, its transparency, but also the ways in which future generations will view their relationship with power. The failure to fully disclose all the facts surrounding JFK's death and the decades-long battle for the truth have left a lasting legacy on American society. It's not just about uncovering the past. It's about understanding how the refusal to share the full truth continues to influence modern politics. For many, the questions surrounding JFK's assassination represent more than just a historical inquiry. They serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of public trust in institutions. When the government withholds crucial information, especially regarding something as significant as the death of a president, it erodes the foundation of trust that a democracy relies on. People are left to wonder, if the government is hiding this, what else are they keeping from us? What truths about other pivotal moments in history remain locked away, waiting for someone to uncover them? And this sense of distrust is not isolated to one generation or event. It spans decades and impacts how Americans interact with their government today. The increasing polarization in politics, the spread of misinformation, and the rise of distrust in government officials are all connected to the same distrust that began with JFK's assassination. The inability to trust the government's official story has created a culture where suspicion runs deep, and it's easier to believe in alternative narratives even when they are based on little to no evidence. In the digital age, the challenge is only growing. Social media has become a primary source of information for millions, yet it also has a dark side, amplifying false information, spreading conspiracy theories, and making it harder to separate fact from fiction. In this environment, how do we ensure that the truth is heard and that public institutions are held accountable? The same institutions that have been under scrutiny since JFK's assassination are still at the center of debates about transparency and accountability today. We are seeing the effects of this skepticism now more than ever, as modern political figures are frequently called out for alleged cover-ups and misinformation. From scandals involving global surveillance to the questionable handling of crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, the demand for transparency is louder than ever. In a time when information is readily available at the click of a button, the public wants more access to the truth, and they want it now. The legacy of JFK's assassination is a lesson in the power of information, the importance of transparency, and the consequences of a government that chooses to keep secrets. Perhaps the most significant consequence of JFK's assassination and the subsequent cover-up is the way it shaped American political discourse. The assassination and the failure to provide a clear and definitive account of it became a rallying cry for those who felt the government was not acting in their best interest. The public's demand for answers was, and remains, an expression of the people's desire to reclaim control over the narrative. When truth is hidden, it breeds disillusionment. But when the public pushes back, whether through investigations, whistleblowers, or grassroots movements, it can lead to accountability. The ongoing efforts by independent researchers, journalists, and advocates to uncover the truth about JFK's death are part of a larger movement to demand more from our government. They are not just asking for the truth about one event, they are asking for a more transparent government overall. These efforts represent a growing recognition that the health of a democracy depends on the willingness of its leaders to be open and honest with the people they serve. The continued secrecy surrounding the assassination raises more than just questions about JFK's death. It also calls into question the very nature of political power. What lengths will those in power go to protect their own interests? And how much will they conceal to maintain control? These are questions that resonate not just with those investigating JFK's assassination, but with anyone questioning the integrity of our political systems today. The truth about JFK's death is not just a matter of historical curiosity. It is a crucial piece of understanding the dynamics of power and the ways in which government operates behind closed doors. As we push for greater transparency in the government's handling of critical events, the legacy of JFK's assassination looms large. The lessons learned from this cover-up have profound implications for the future of American democracy. Can we trust our government to disclose the truth when it matters most? Or will we continue to grapple with a government that chooses to protect its own interests, even at the cost of public trust? The fight for the truth about JFK's assassination is a microcosm of the larger battle for accountability in government. The question remains, will we ever uncover the full story? Or will the truth about JFK's death remain locked away, with the full details obscured by layers of secrecy? As time goes on, more and more people are becoming aware of the significance of uncovering the truth. Not just for the sake of historical accuracy, but for the sake of restoring public faith in institutions. The question that continues to linger, and that will drive future investigations, is how long will it take before the full truth comes to light? And what other secrets will we uncover along the way? This journey is not just about seeking answers to one tragic event, but about challenging the systems that control the flow of information and holding those in power accountable for their actions. The road to transparency may be long, but the search for the truth will continue until it is fully revealed. Stay tuned as we continue to explore the unresolved mysteries of JFK's assassination and other major political cover-ups. This investigation is far from over, and the answers we seek are closer than ever. Keep following the trail of truth. We are just getting started. As the investigation into JFK's assassination continues, it's becoming increasingly clear that the pursuit of the full truth is not just about finding out what happened on that fateful day in Dealey Plaza. It's about understanding the broader implications of how government power and secrecy have shaped American society and the way the public perceives its institutions. The unanswered questions, the discrepancies, and the evidence that has been hidden for so long are not just about one man's death. They are part of a much larger story about accountability, trust, and the role of transparency in a democracy. The impact of JFK's assassination extends far beyond the immediate consequences of that day. It represents a pivotal moment in American history, one that has shaped the trajectory of how citizens view their government, how information is controlled, and how power operates behind closed doors. For many, the continued refusal to fully disclose the facts surrounding the assassination is a symbol of a larger systemic issue within the U.S. government. The refusal to be fully transparent with the public, but as time marches on, the questions surrounding JFK's death continue to evolve, and new revelations emerge. Each new document that is declassified, each new witness testimony that comes to light, adds to the growing body of evidence that suggests there's more to the story than we've been told. The fight for the truth is ongoing, but the question remains, will the full picture ever be revealed? Or will those in power continue to manipulate the narrative to protect their own interests? One of the key takeaways from this investigation is the role that intelligence agencies, like the CIA, played in shaping the narrative surrounding JFK's assassination. The CIA in particular has long been seen as a powerful force within the U.S. government. With the ability to shape not just policy but public perception, JFK had a complicated relationship with the CIA, especially after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. His refusal to escalate tensions with Cuba and his more cautious approach to the Cold War put him at odds with those in the intelligence community who believed in a more aggressive stance. Some argue that this tension, combined with Kennedy's political agenda, may have played a role in his assassination. Could the CIA have been involved in orchestrating the murder, or at least in covering it up afterward? The release of CIA documents over the years has only fueled these suspicions, as many of the agency's actions surrounding Kennedy's death remain shrouded in mystery. Despite the declassification of thousands of documents, crucial pieces of the puzzle are still missing. These gaps in the historical record have left the public with an incomplete picture of what truly happened. As new documents continue to be released, the question persists. What will we find in these papers, and how will they change our understanding of JFK's assassination? Similarly, the FBI's involvement in the investigation has been called into question. J. Edgar Hoover, the long-serving director of the FBI, was known for his tight grip on power and his tendency to manipulate investigations for political purposes. His role in the investigation into Kennedy's death has been the subject of much debate. Was Hoover involved in suppressing evidence, or steering the investigation in a direction that would support the idea of a lone gunman? And what about the FBI's failure to fully investigate other leads, such as the possibility of multiple shooters or the potential involvement of organized crime? The agency's actions have raised more questions than answers, and it's clear that the public may never know the full extent of its involvement in the case. As we continue to push for more information, it's important to remember that the fight for transparency is not just about JFK, it's about the broader implications of government. Secrecy. The public has the right to know the truth, especially when it comes to events that have shaped the course of history. The fact that JFK's assassination remains clouded in secrecy is a reminder that even in the 21st century, we are still grappling with the same issues of transparency, accountability, and trust that have plagued the nation for decades. The lessons learned from JFK's assassination extend far beyond the historical event itself. They are about understanding the power dynamics within the government and recognizing the ways in which information can be manipulated to control the public narrative. The continued withholding of critical documents only reinforces the idea that certain elements within the government are more concerned with maintaining control than with providing the public with the full truth. In today's political climate, the demand for transparency and accountability has never been more urgent. From government surveillance programs to political scandals, the American public is increasingly skeptical of the information they are being given. As citizens become more aware of how information is controlled, there is growing pressure on the government to be more forthcoming with the truth. But this is not just about one historical event. It's about ensuring that we as a society hold those in power accountable for their actions. So what happens next? The quest for the truth about JFK's assassination is far from over. The ongoing fight for transparency, the continued push for the release of classified documents, and the growing demand for accountability in government are all part of a larger movement to restore public trust. The deeper we dig, the closer we get to uncovering the full story. But as new revelations emerge, the question still remains: will we ever know everything? The legacy of JFK's assassination is not just about the loss of a president. It's about the ongoing struggle for truth and transparency in government. The failure to fully disclose the facts about that tragic day has left a void in the national consciousness, and it has shaped the way the public views government institutions today. The unanswered questions and the continued secrecy surrounding JFK as death are a testament to the challenges we face as a society in our efforts to uncover the truth. The fight for transparency is not just about one event in history, it's about ensuring that we continue to seek the truth in all matters of public interest. As we close out this chapter of the investigation, it's clear that the questions surrounding JFK's assassination will continue to echo through history. What truths remain hidden, and how long will it take for us to finally uncover them? The search for answers is ongoing, and we will continue to follow the trail of evidence until the full story is finally revealed. Stay with us as we continue to explore this and other unresolved historical mysteries. The search for truth never ends, and we are committed to bringing you the answers you deserve. Keep following the investigation. There is much more to uncover. As we conclude this chapter of our investigation into the assassination of JFK, one thing remains clear: the truth is still out there, and the mystery continues to haunt the United States. The cover-ups, the inconsistencies, The unanswered questions, they've all left us wondering what we still don't know, and how much of the official story has been concealed over the decades. The refusal to release key documents, the discrepancies in eyewitness testimony, and the involvement of powerful agencies like the CIA and FBI have ensured that the story of JFK's death is far from over. Despite the official narrative, the questions surrounding Kennedy's assassination refuse to go away. New revelations, new documents, and new research continue to surface, bringing us closer to the truth. But there's still so much we don't know. What else is being kept hidden, and why? As long as the story remains incomplete, the search for answers will continue. The legacy of JFK's assassination serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of transparency, truth, and accountability in our government. My unanswered questions about JFK's assassination speak to a larger issue: how governments shape history and how those in power control the narrative. As we continue to peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding JFK's death, we begin to see the complex forces at play and how those forces have affected the way we view our leaders and institutions today. The struggle for truth continues, and it is up to us to push for the answers that have been kept from us for so long. Why do you think the full truth about JFK's assassination has been kept from the public for so long? What else could be lurking in the files that are still classified? The search for these answers is far from over, and we will continue to follow the trail wherever it leads. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unresolved questions of JFK's assassination. If you found this investigation compelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future videos. Stay tuned for more in-depth investigations that dig into some of history's biggest mysteries and cover-ups. But before you go, we've got something even more intriguing coming your way. In our next video, we'll be exploring another major historical event that has been shrouded in secrecy. What happened behind the scenes during one of the most controversial political moments of the 20th century? You won't want to miss the explosive revelations we have in store. Make sure you resubscribed and hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when it drops.